but I a way in which the logic and capacity be optimized for
not today.
All right, folks. I know what you're thinking. Hydrogen. Isn't that what happens when you mix Mentos and a Diet Coke? Well, turns out it also could be the key to a clean energy future. And today, we've got a guy who's going to explain it all without making our heads explode. Please welcome Lennart van den Berg, the hydrogen hero from the Netherlands. He's got more passion for fighting climate change than I have for avoiding awkward social situations. So let's dive in and see if we can learn a thing or two about this whole Dutch hydrogen thing. Lennart, welcome.
Thank you, Hannes. Thanks.
Can you give us a short introduction to who is Lennart van den Berg and about the TNO?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Lennart van den Berg. I'm working at TNO. TNO is the Dutch Applied Research Organization. We're independent, not for profit. Around 5,000 people, around 1,000 people are working on the energy transition. Based in the Netherlands, and myself, I'm leading the clean hydrogen cluster. So we're working on electrolyzer technologies. We need the electrolyzer to produce hydrogen. There are multiple technologies, and with a team of about 50 people, we're working on solving the key challenges for the electrolyzer technologies. So make the electrolyzer more efficient, more durable, at lower cost, and also try to limit the use of pressure group metals, which are also being used in the electrolyzer. So that's me. Thanks.
Given the current technological and economical limitations, are the Dutch ambitious hydrogen targets truly realistic?
You can say the Netherlands, together with Germany, is leading the hydrogen transition within Europe. We have quite ambitious targets. So we want to, within 2030, so within 6 years, produce 4 to 6 gigawatt installed capacity in the Netherlands only. So 4 to 6,000 megawatts installed capacity. If you ask me if that is realistic, up to now we're constructing the largest hydrogen plant in Rotterdam. So that's it's a 200 megawatt facility. There are a lot of projects being announced, but it's still challenging. As TNO, we did a research on what will be the actual cost of hydrogen. So we got all the business case of all the hydrogen projects which are in the pipeline up to now. And then we saw the cost of this hydrogen will be somewhere between 12 to 16 euro per kilo. And that's much higher than we initially expected. There the costs were prognosed or something like 2, 3, 4 euros. So it's now clear that the cost will be much higher. So we need really instruments to get this hydrogen development actually happening. And that part will be subsidized. So the Dutch government invests quite a lot of subsidy to get the projects running. But there's not only subsidy, also regulation is important. So this European regulations, to get 42% of the green hydrogen to be green in 2030 is really important. So having a mandate to actually enforce industry to get rid of this gray hydrogen, but start using green hydrogen. So it's a combination with subsidies and regulations to get the nice ambitions in reality, because it needs to be worked out from both government side and industry side. And it's not only production, it's production. We need to develop infrastructure. We need to develop hydrogen storage and applications. So it's the development of the whole hydrogen value chain. And that's really, really important. And I think the Netherlands is doing quite a good job.
Is the simultaneous pursuit of green and blue hydrogen hindering transition to a fully sustainable hydrogen economy?
That's a good question. The end goal is obviously green hydrogen, and it's really good to understand why is green hydrogen so important, especially for the Netherlands. If you're looking at the Netherlands, with most of the Netherlands is actually sea. So if the largest part of the Netherlands is actually offshore, and we've got a potential of up to 70 gigawatt of offshore wind. And if we want to utilize all this renewable electricity, the plans are 21 gigawatt up to 2030 and the 70 gigawatts up to 2050. But if we want to utilize all this renewable electricity, we can only do that using green hydrogen. So to transform part of this renewable electricity via electrolysis to hydrogen and to transport and storage. So that's crucial to enable the energy transition. That's a complete other objective than this blue hydrogen. Blue hydrogen is basically CCS option. So then the CO2 is get extracted from fossil gas and being stored, and it will play a role in the need to get low carbon hydrogen. So it will play a role, but it's a different role. So the one is really an energy system role, this green hydrogen to integrate this renewable energy and to balance the system, where the blue hydrogen is really to get rid of the CO2 from the gray hydrogen and use it in the industry. So it's partly complementary, but also it's a different use, basically. Yeah.
Will the Netherlands be able to produce enough hydrogen for their own market, for their own needs?
It will be a mix. I mean, if you see, the Netherlands is, after Germany, the largest hydrogen producer, and also use a lot of hydrogen. But we see definitely a role for the Netherlands to import hydrogen via the port of Rotterdam. Most of the energy in Europe is being imported by the port of Rotterdam. So we see, and also port of Amsterdam play a big role there. So we see the Netherlands really as a hub for Europe to get all this, where it's now basically fossil, to get as quickly as possible rid of this fossil and get renewable energy carriers. They can be hydrogen, can be ammonia, can be methanol, can be LOHC, getting that energy into the port and then distributed to basically the rest of Europe, and most importantly Germany. So it will be a mix. So own production with this offshore wind, but also with onshore solar. Netherlands is also one of the leading in the solar hydrogen production. So we've got quite big capacity of solar production onshore, but also offshore solar. So floating solar will take a role in the future. So it will be both. So own hydrogen production as well as import, and it will be both will be important, basically. Yeah.
One important question in that context: could dependence on imported hydrogen create geopolitical risks and supply chain vulnerabilities?
That's a really good question. I mean, we always will be dependent on other countries. We see that now at the moment. We saw what happened with Europe being dependent on gas coming from Russia. Europe quickly act to actually lower that dependency and get gas from Norway, get gas from the US. Now we need to get access to renewable sources. The Netherlands have now over 20 MOUs, so memories of understanding, with different countries to discuss import of hydrogen. That's from Spain to Morocco to South Africa up to Australia. So we're looking at different areas in the world where we can source the hydrogen. But there will be also a level of dependency, and that's what referring to the earlier question. We both need our own production, so produce as much as possible at Netherlands ourselves, but also have different sources to source the hydrogen from for the Netherlands, but also for the rest of Europe. So the collaboration with other countries is really important, and I think that's also a strength, because that's also good to be on good speaking terms with our friends all over the world to jointly tackle the energy and climate crisis. So that's really important to collaborate there. Yeah.
I know you don't have a crystal ball, but you have a knowledge to back up this question. When will green hydrogen become cost competitive with fossil fuels? And could the focus on hydrogen divert resources from other renewables?
Yeah. With respect to the first question, I mean, that's completely related to government policies. I mean, the whole reason why we go to hydrogen is really governmental driven. It's really because we want to become more sustainable. We want to commit to the Paris Agreement to limit our CO2 emission to get to the max 1.5 degrees global warming. So the whole hydrogen development is governmental driven. So also, if you look at the cost of fossils, you can't compete with the cost of fossils because they're coming out of the ground. And you don't need to produce it. So if you're looking at green hydrogen, you first need to produce electricity, then you need 50 kilowatt hours to actually produce the hydrogen. So it will be really difficult to compete. So you really need regulations. So higher CO2 taxes, a mandate, subsidy. So in order to have a fair level playing field with this gray hydrogen, because not all externalities. So for example, the CO2 penalty is being taken into account at full. So that's really, really important. So yeah, you answering the question. So if the right policy mechanisms are in place, and there will be a clear phase out of the gray gray hydrogen, yeah, then there is not so much about can it compete, but can we get it to a low, as low as cost as possible, so that being accepted by the industry, by society, and that yeah, we can keep our industry competitive. And I think that's in Europe we've got also this carbon border adjustment mechanism, the CBAM. So basically that's like also protecting the European industry. Of protecting is maybe not the right word, but at least that we are advanced in our CO2 regulation, and that other countries who are not having like a CO2 trading scheme, or like a price to CO2, they need to pay that at the border. And that's, I think, a really nice mechanisms to protect our industry. Yeah, and does green hydrogen investment compete with, for example, renewable investment? I don't think that's the case, because we need a lot of renewable electricity in order to produce green hydrogen. I think Europe have really nice regulations again to make sure that you only produce green hydrogen when it's with extra new renewables, when there is a direct connection, when there is also produced when there is in the same month or same hours when you do use electricity. So that's, I think that's these kind of instruments make sure that green hydrogen not cannibalize all the renewable electricity, I would say. So I think that's well organized already. Yeah.
When it comes to climate change, are we too late?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, I think if you ask everyone, we should act much earlier, because if you look at how many climate conferences we already had, and how long we already know that this global warming is going on, I think everyone should say that we should act much earlier. So, and if you look at what we call carbon budget, so how much CO2 we can emit, of we can maximum emit to stay within this 1.5 degree global warming. Yeah, that carbon budgeting is slowing down every day. So it will be challenging still to reach not more than 1.5 degree global warming. So then also in the Netherlands, we're also even looking at negative carbon emission. So can we actually extract CO2 from the air, from the sea, in order to get CO2 back into the ground? But these are measures which are extremely costly and extremely energy intensive. And it's much easier to not extract CO2 from the air with low concentration, or CO2 from the sea with a bit higher concentration, but actually not emitting the CO2 anymore. But yeah, I mean, we all know it's difficult, but we should we had to act much earlier, definitely. Yeah.
If you are to close this gap, what would you choose? Solar, electrification, or hydrogen?
Yeah, basically how Tino looks at it, I mean, everything we can do with electricity, we should do with electricity, basically. Yeah, because I mean, then you don't have the conversion losses. So, for example, in the built environment in the Netherlands, most of the houses in the Netherlands are connected to the gas grid. So together with the UK, I think the Netherlands is leading in that sense with most houses connected to gas, because we had Groningen, a big gas reservoir from history. But now we see, the gas per definition causes CO2 emission. So now what's the best way to get your house more sustainable? That's not per definition with hydrogen, definitely not. Use district heating, for example, with geothermal energy, or use a heat pump, electric heat pump, because then you can have a coefficient of performance somewhere between 2 and up to 4, 5, 6%, so much higher efficiency. So definitely for these appliances, hydrogen won't be the first option. So we should be careful using hydrogen, because it's really variable. So use it for the industries where there's not really an alternative. So obviously steel, thinking aviation for creating synthetic air fuels, or shipping, that can be hydrogen, can be ammonia, or producing of fertilizers, or for this peak power for zero emission electricity production, only for the peak. So these specific use cases, we should use hydrogen. But everywhere where there is electricity, yeah, we will say please use electricity directly. Definitely, yeah.
Are there concerns about potential delays or cost overruns in developing hydrogen infrastructure?
Yes, I mean, in general, every infrastructure project is delaying. It can be hydrogen, but also in road infrastructure, any large infrastructure. You should imagine if you develop new pipelines crossing multiple properties, a lot of permits are needed. So these projects are quite complex. The advantage in the Netherlands is we have already a big gas grid going to the 6 major industrial areas in the Netherlands, and that gas grid is already there with multiple pipes, and we just can use one of the pipe where now natural gas is being used. We can use it for hydrogen. So that is a bit easier because we need to only, between brackets, change it to get it ready for hydrogen. So that can be easier. But we also now discussing developing a hydrogen line from the Rotterdam to Limburg and also to Germany. That is being called the Delta Rhine corridor, and there we had the idea to have both hydrogen but also CO2 and electricity being transported. And we see there's already a delay of developing of this large infrastructure because it's really complex developing this from scratch. And we see the same in Germany. So there will be, they will come, but it takes time to get actually this implementation in the field. Definitely.
What is the certainty in using this existing infrastructure when it comes to pipelines? Is there a research behind it?
The certainty, I mean, it is a risk because I mean you're developing infrastructure with the assumption there will be hydrogen production and there will be hydrogen offtakes. So obviously there is research, but the research is based on current situation. What's the current hydrogen production with gray hydrogen? What's the current demand with the current industry? But we all know that the world is changing. So industry is developing, new industries are coming, other industries maybe leave, going to other areas in Europe or in the world. So that's the future hydrogen demand. There are scenarios. So there are definitely research done, and also Tino and research organization in Germany, for example, ULIC is doing research on what will be the hydrogen future demand, but these are scenarios. There's still a certain amount of risk if you're developing infrastructure. Will be the utilization of this infrastructure, especially in the beginning of the years, be sufficient? And who is willing to take the risk if the infrastructure is underutilized? So in the Netherlands, there's a big investment, around 1 billion in this hydrogen infrastructure. But with the idea that the future users of this hydrogen infrastructure will pay back this investment. If the future users are lower than expected, then these hydrogen costs will be higher for the still remaining users, and that can have an effect on the business case. So these market dynamics are still challenging. Yeah.
How is the Netherlands minimizing the environmental impact of hydrogen production, especially regarding water and land use?
Yeah, I mean, the land use is a challenge because I mean the Netherlands is not so big. So you see the Port of Rotterdam reserved a plot for a gigawatt conversion park. So they develop their gigawatt of electrolyzer capacity, but that's only 1 gigawatt. They will want to go to 6 or 8 or even more gigawatts. So that can be onshore, but also there's a discussion: should we produce the hydrogen offshore? Because if you develop a lot of offshore wind, it can make sense to produce this hydrogen offshore close to the wind parks and not transport electricity to the shore, but directly produce hydrogen and bring that by partly existing infrastructure to the shore. So that can be an efficient way to also for the land use, but also from an energy efficient point of view. Water is another important thing. And that's we can use fresh water. We can also use desalinated water, which also obviously use a lot of electricity, but that's an important point. But on the other hand, we should not neglect that the current gray hydrogen also use a lot of water, So there's not that the green hydrogen use more, but still, especially for countries in Africa, that can be definitely a problem, because in the Netherlands there's not directly a water problem, although we're working on capturing the fresh water as long as possible. So and we are really good at it. But other areas in the world, that's definitely an issue to look at. Yeah.
What are the key technical challenges in improving electrolyzer efficiency and durability and cost effectiveness?
The key challenge, for the people who are into the field, there are 4 main electrolyzer technologies. If we're looking at the low temperature electrolysis, which operate around 80 degrees, we've got the PEM, the alkaline, which are most mature, and the IM, which is less mature, and also the high temperature solid oxide electrolyzer, which operates, it's basically steam electrolysis, which operates over 400 degrees. So if we look at each technology, the alkaline is most mature technology. I mean, there are in Europe facilities, in the 1970s were facilities running up to 200 megawatts in Norway and also in Morocco, Egypt. But now, if we now looking at modern alkaline electrolyzer, the key challenge is there: can we go to higher current densities? Because these alkaline electrolyzers are as big as a truck, because the current densities are not that high. So can we go to high current densities is important. And can we go to a lower cost of the components is important. And can we have it flexible operated? Now you see that the flexible operation of alkaline is a challenge. So can we have flexible operation of the alkaline? That's important. If we're looking at the PEM technology, it can operate flexible. But the challenge for PEM is, for example, it's now using a naphthalene membrane, a fluor-based membrane. And if you're looking at Europe, they are working on a PFAS ban. And that's basically the membrane being used in PEM electrolyzer and fuel, and PEM fuel cells are basing PFAS material. So can we work on a fluor-free membrane? That's one of the challenges. The other challenge is iridium being used in the PEM electrolyzer. The good thing of using iridium as a catalyst is it's really efficient, because the reaction is going much faster. The downside is this iridium is quite costly. So if you use 2 milligram of loading of iridium in a PEM electrolyzer, over 50,000 euro of iridium is going in a 1 megawatt electrolyzer. So that's quite expensive. And on the other hand, all this iridium of at least 80-90% coming from South Africa. And on a yearly basis, 7 tons of iridium being harvested to serve the global demand. So if PEM electrolyzer really take off, then there will be at least a pressure on the availability. There are solutions, so we can go much lower in loading. We can look at recycling, but still going lower in loading, that's have an effect on your durability of your electrolyzer, because you want to have this electrolyzer running for at least 80,000 hours. But with a lower loading, that can have an effect on that. So these are some challenges of PEM electrolyzers. The IM, anion exchange membrane, that's an upcoming technology which can be have a high potential, because it's combined basically the benefits of both PEM and alkaline, but it's still at low scale. So can we really develop larger stacks? Can we develop a stable membrane? Can we develop the full supply chain? Because there are not so many component suppliers for the stacks, so that's a challenge. Now, going to the last one, the high temperature solid oxide electrolyzer, there a challenge is really because the high temperature that makes it really efficient, but also have an effect on the degradation of materials. So a long lifetime is really a challenge of this solid oxide electrolyzer stack. So can we improve the components in order that it really can have a technical lifetime of at least 10 years? And that's definitely a challenge where I think a lot of universities and industries are working on also, Tino.
Also, with all of these challenges, how can the challenges of integrating them into the grid be addressed effectively?
I mean, I think the Netherlands, but I also read last week, Germany is facing grid congestion, because this huge amount of renewables and also the high rate of electrification causing grid congestion. So the electricity grid is not strong enough, at least in the Netherlands and now also in Germany, to cope with all this electricity demand and also new electricity supply from solar, decentralized solar and wind. So there will be huge investment of electricity infrastructure in Northwest Europe. So that's definitely needed. The question is how electrolysis can play a role there. Because there's a big lobby from industry, I would say, to say can electrolyzer technology be exempted from electricity grid fees? And I think there can be a good argument at the moment that the electrolysis really help solving grid congestion. So when the electrolyzer run when there is an overshoot of electricity and actually stopped when there is a shortage, then an electrolyzer can really helping solving grid congestion issues. But that means that the operational hours of this green hydrogen production plant will be limited. And that trade-off still need to be really identified and really differ per spot where it makes sense to position an electrolyzer physically in the grid and where not, and where their grid fees should be being applied and where not. So it really depends per location, I would say. Yeah.
Beyond electrolyzers, how is TNO contributing to the development of other aspects of the hydrogen value chain?
Yeah. So indeed, we have a large team of hydrogen production. We also work on the hydrogen infrastructure. So we have a whole group on looking on everything with respect to models, how hydrogen behaves into pipelines, developing sensors, measuring really efficient the hydrogen quality and flow. We have a big group looking at storage of hydrogen in the underground. So looking, can we store hydrogen in empty salt caverns or even empty gas fields? So geologists looking from what's the effect, because you put 200 bar pressure hydrogen into the underground. So we are one of the leaders in the field in Europe on, for example, in European projects doing first experiments of this hydrogen injection in the salt caverns, and that's being proven at least that it will be possible. And empty gas fields, that's the next step. They can be onshore and also be offshore. So we have a lot of activities there. And we have a big group working on hydrogen policy studies. So supporting the Dutch government and also European government to think along them from how we can make this energy transition most effective. What role should hydrogen play there? And how can we make sure that the targets we defined with ourselves can be met? So there we play a big role. And also with respect to circularity and emissions, we have quite a big team. For example, we're now starting in the Netherlands with monitoring the hydrogen emission, and that's a topic which is not really well known in the community, because hydrogen is an indirect greenhouse gas. Because when hydrogen leaks to the air, it's causing, simple saying, that methane has a longer lifetime. So we should really prevent that hydrogen leaks to the air, because it's much stronger than CO2. So obviously you will not produce hydrogen to just let it escape. So the big question is, what will be the leakage rate of this hydrogen? So we're now starting a measuring campaign within the Netherlands at infrastructure, but also near industrial sites, to measure the actual leakage rate in practice. And that's really difficult, because you need to have a high concentration and continuously measuring device. But together with our partners, we got our hand on such a device, and we'll do this measuring. But that's really important to make sure that this leakage rate stay around 1% and not go up to 10%, because then this negative effect will be severe.
What is TNO's long-term vision for the hydrogen economy and its integration with other renewables?
I mean, we see hydrogen really as one of the puzzle pieces in the whole energy transition. So we're not really talking about a hydrogen economy. We just see the energy transition as a key step towards a climate neutral energy system. And we see that hydrogen play a key role for decarbonizing heavy industries. So that's steel, that's aviation, shipping, So that part, we see a key role for hydrogen for storing our energy, especially in winter times. Now we use natural gas. We pump it up and store it back in summer in reservoirs. So natural gas now is being used as our energy buffer, basically. But that per definition causing CO2 emissions. So hydrogen can partly take over that role. So we can store hydrogen in the underground and use it in the winter times. So that's important. And we need hydrogen to integrate this huge amount of renewables we produce on the North Sea. So these three things, we see a key role for the hydrogen development, and also there are opportunities. For example, we've got a big high-tech industry in the Netherlands who can contribute to developing electrolyzer or electrolyzer components, so that so we can contribute also to to this new industry with circular designs of electrolyzer, low material use. So these kind of things also more an opportunity base. Yeah.
Lennart, thank you for being my guest today. This was a very informative session.
Thank you, Arnes. Pleasure to be here.
And just for the viewers, we will have a live webinar with TNO pretty soon. So just we'll keep you posted. Thanks again. See you soon.
Thank you.